Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing some more wildlife photography, but this time we're going to be focusing on the camera that I'm using. So I have the Canon 250D here. I've done a review on this camera if you want to go see it, but today we're going to be using it out in the field to see how good this camera really is at wildlife photography. So we're going to be going on our normal walk that I do for all of my wildlife walks. If you haven't seen them, go check them out, they're on my channel. And that means we're going to be starting off in this field, as you can see. But then we'll go on golf courses and wild fields and canals. We're going to go to a lot of places, so hopefully see a wide range of wildlife to photograph. Each time I take a photo, I will be thinking about how this camera specifically helped me or didn't help me take the photo. This means that you can see how good this camera is at wildlife photography should you want to get it, or if you're just interested. So, without further ado, let's get on with the video. And we've walked quite a way now. We've come all the way down the canal and saw nothing. There was nothing there today, but it is a sunny afternoon, so there are lots of people walking these paths, which could scare off the wildlife. But anyway, we have now come onto a golf course. Now, this golf course, I always say it every time I say it is a great golf course and we'll find something here, and we don't always find something here, but we're going to have a look. Hopefully there'll be something here fun to photograph and we can see the abilities of the Canon 250D. And we have found some wildlife on this golf course. Behind me there is a heron. You may be able to see it. I'll circle it if you can see it, but there is a heron and I use the camera. I've taken some photos. Now, this heron is quite a long way away and I don't want to get a tripod out. So, because the heron is quite nervous, it might fly away, I want to be able to get a photo as quickly as possible. Now, this camera is good for that because it's a very light camera. Now, I've got the Sigma 150 to 600mm lens attached to this camera, so it's a very big setup. And so by having a camera that is light and easy to use, it means that if I need to quickly use it, I can simply grab it and hand hold it, as opposed to needing to get a tripod out. Now, I'm just walking closer to this heron. He doesn't seem too bothered by me, which is good. And if he really doesn't care, I'll set up the tripod and get some video. I have the camera set up, getting some video. Now, I'm very low to the ground, the tripod's quite low, I'm squatting down here just so that I'm not looking big or dangerous, because otherwise the heron could get scared of me and fly off. So, more hens just walked in front of the camera. So, one of the great things about the Canon 250D is the size and weight of this camera. It's a very small, compact and lightweight camera, which means it's very easy to use, it's very quick, it's not heavy, and easy to store. In a camera bag, it doesn't take up room at all. As you can see, it's sitting on my tripod nicely, and it makes the lens look huge in comparison, but that's a good thing, because we want to minimize the weight as much as possible. So, we left the golf course after getting some nice video. You can see the video quality of this camera. It's very good, the video quality. Now, there is 4K video, which I use quite a lot. Now, I wasn't just then on those videos, it was just full HD, but that's because, unless it's something special, I don't want to use up all of the space on my card. Now, there are issues with the 4K video on this camera. You've probably heard it before, but it's to do with the autofocusing. Now, using 4K on this camera will mean the autofocus hunts constantly, which is very annoying. However, for wildlife, I use manual focus. So if you're using manual focus, then the 4K on this camera is excellent. It works as 4K, and if you're manual focusing it, then it doesn't matter because it won't be hunting. So I will get some 4K video later on if I get the opportunity. Now, I've stopped in some woodlands here, and I'm just going to talk a bit about the camera while I'm here, just in case we don't get the opportunity later on. So one of the great features of this camera, one of the reasons I actually went for this camera over other models, is the LCD screen. Now, this screen flips out, as you can see, and it rotates. It's a very maneuverable screen. I went for this screen for multiple reasons, because one, if your camera is really low down to the ground, then you don't want to get your face down into the ground. I mean, sometimes you might, but as a general rule, you want to stay clean. Whereas with this screen, you can simply flip it up and you can see what you're doing, even if the camera's low to the ground. It also means that you can film things holding your camera like this. Now, I like to film like this. It's very stable, and I can look down at the screen and get nice video with a very stable platform for the camera. The screen also flips in so that the touch part of the screen faces the body, which means you just leave the protective plastic on the outside of the camera. This is also great because when you're out in wildlife, there's branches and leaves and there's things splashing around, you know. Your camera's going to get knocked a few times, and if you have the plastic protection, then your screen should not get damaged. Now, I have some tempered glass on the screen anyway, just in case, but you don't need it because you can just flip it in and it's nice and protected. So, now we've talked a bit about the screen, I'm going to go off, see if I can find any more wildlife, and maybe I'll get to demonstrate how the screen works. Probably best I take you with me. So up till now we've been using the Sigma 150-600mm lens. This is a large telephoto lens for wildlife. However, you may not have such a large lens. You may be using a smaller lens. So I've got the Canon 50mm 1.8 lens here, and there's some beautiful mushrooms. So I'm going to use this camera and the 50mm lens to see what photos we can get with the mushrooms. Now, the Canon 250D has a huge ISO range, and that's great. But when it gets to about 3200, you start to see the specks in your image. This means I never go higher than 3200. However, you can visibly see noise in the photo. This is where the camera may be worse than other cameras. The camera, however, can go up to 1600 very well, and the image is fine. So anyway, this lens has an aperture of 1.8, meaning lots of light can go into the camera, and I can use a low ISO to get this image. Now, this is rotting wood. It's very red. There's all this red kind of powder here, which makes a beautiful background, a very warm background, which is very appropriate because it's autumn. The leaves are starting to go orange, not quite there yet, but soon we'll be getting some cool autumn photos. I'm just now using the red of this tree to give a nice orange glow to the background. And the weather has got a bit colder, but just got a good photo of a robin. Now, this robin was sitting deep in the bushes, and so I had to use a very low shutter speed and a very high ISO. I'm using the Sigma 150-600mm again, so a long lens, which means I have quite a high aperture. I think it was 6.3, but I'll put the details of what I used for the photo with the photo. So yeah, I took a photo of the robin and I'm pretty glad with how it turned out, so here is the photos. Okay, now we've come to the farm, and on this bush behind me there's loads of stone chats. Now these birds are not that common. They are in farmlands and stuff, but you often don't see them in your garden, so there's something different to see, and they're quite close on the bush, but they're also not that scared because quite a few people walk down this path. So I got some photos of them. There's a male and a female, they're both here. I've got some good photos, happy with how they turned out. Again, I was using 800 ISO, I believe, so a tiny bit of noise, but the camera has coped with it well. So I'll show you those photos and you can see for yourself. And just behind me I found a pheasant. He's over this fence, and this is another time where the camera came in handy, because this fence is quite tall, and if I'm using it with my eye through the viewfinder, I can't see the pheasant. But as I talked about the rotatable LCD screen, this means that I could rotate it. I could hold the camera above my head over the fence and look up at the screen, which was tilted downwards towards me. So here are the photos that let me took, and you can probably see why the screen is really helpful. Now, we are at the farm, which is the last destination on our walk. However, don't leave, because I'm going to go back to my house. The weather's getting a bit naff, and because it's autumn, the nights come early, so I'm going to go back to my house and I will demonstrate how the Wi-Fi connection works, because that is really useful for wildlife photography. It means you can set your camera up near a bird feeder or a perch, and then you can move away so the birds are not scared and take photos from a distance. So I'm going to go home and I'll demonstrate that for you. See you there. And we are now in my back garden, and I'm going to show you how to use the Wi-Fi feature on the camera to get good wildlife photos if you don't have a long lens. So first of all, I'm going to put some food on my bird feeder, and then I'm going to use that to attract the birds so that they get closer to my camera and I can take photos using the Wi-Fi from my window. So first of all, let's put some food on the feeder. And there's already action on the feeders. I just went to grab my camera, and as you saw, there were some starlings there. Now I've got my Canon 250D and the 18 to 55mm lens. This lens is not good for wildlife because it has no zoom whatsoever. I have my KNF tripod, all reviewed on my channel if you want to go check it out. I'm going to set this up in front of the feeders, and hopefully the birds will land on the feeders, not be phased by the equipment, and that I can get good photos from a distance away. And the camera is all set up, so now I'm going to pair it with Wi-Fi to my computer, and then I'm going to go up to my bedroom window and watch it from a distance away and hope that the wildlife will still come to the feeder. And so as you saw, we got some great photos using the Wi-Fi, even though we only have a tiny 18 to 55mm lens. So this shows how this camera can let you do wildlife photography even if you have a lens which is not a telephoto zoom. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.